She gave an abandoned baby a home, a name, and 17 years of her life. She never imagined the woman who left him to die would one day sue her for custody. My God, what is that? A baby is crying. Mary froze on the stairwell between the 4th and 5th floors. Her hearing wasn't deceiving her. From somewhere above came a faint but distinct infant's cry. Her fingers clutched the worn handle of her bag full of school notebooks. After 6 lessons of English literature with the 8th graders and 2 hours of extra tutoring, her head was buzzing, her legs were buzzing, and the entire freezing 5-story walk-up seemed to hum with the January cold. "Maybe it's someone's TV?" she whispered, taking another step up. But the higher she climbed, the clearer the sound became. Trembling, plaintive, like the mewl of a kitten, but human. 5th floor. The crying was coming from near the trash chute. Mary swallowed, feeling her heart pounding somewhere in her throat. She rounded the metal chute box and saw a bundle. An ordinary old floral pattern blanket, the kind found in almost every thrift store. And in it, a child. She exhaled, sinking into a crouch. A real child. A tiny red face wrinkled from crying, half-closed Asa eyes, transparent eyelashes stuck together with tears. A newborn. Mary carefully touched the baby's cheek. It was cold. The blanket barely covered the tiny body, and next to it was a sheet of lined paper folded in 4. With icy fingers, she unfolded the note. "Can't raise it. Sorry." 3 words, written in an uneven hand. No signature, no explanations. "How could this be?" Mary whispered, looking around. "How could this be?" The empty stairwell offered no answer. Only the wind from the street howled, and from the apartment opposite came the muffled sound of a TV playing Friends. Mary took off her scarf, wrapped it around the baby over the blanket, and held him close. The little one whimpered more strongly, as if feeling the warmth and the chance to express all his protest against the cold and loneliness. "Shh, now, quiet," she whispered mechanically, rocking the bundle. "Hush, little one, everything's all right." At that moment, the door to the opposite apartment opened a crack, and a gray head in rollers peeked out. "Mary, honey, is that you making noise out here?" asked the neighbor, then gasped when she saw what the young teacher was holding. "Good heavens, a baby! Barbara is here!" That was all Mary could manage to say, handing the neighbor the note. The old woman put on her glasses, read it, and threw up her hands. "We must call the police, Mary. This is just awful, in such frost." Yes, of course," Mary nodded, but didn't move. She looked at the red little face framed by her scarf, and something strange was happening to her heart. It felt like it was stretching, growing larger, and something hot was blooming inside, taking her breath away. "Come to my place," fussed Barbara. "I'll heat up some water, make tea, and you call the police." In Barbara's cramped little kitchen, it smelled of cookies and mint tea. The old woman bustled about, putting on the kettle, looking for warm rags. Mary sat at the table, holding the quieted baby to her chest, unable to bring herself to pick up the receiver of the old telephone. "Mary, honey, what are you going to do?" the neighbor finally asked, placing a mug of strong tea in front of her. "Will you send him to foster care?" Mary shuddered as if electrocuted. Foster care. Images from the group home, where her school held charity concerts, flashed before her eyes. Peeling walls, sagging beds, children with identical haircuts and extinguished eyes, social workers tired from chronic lack of sleep and meager salaries. How can I give him away? Burst out of her. He's all alone in the world. My dear Mary, sighed Barbara, what are you talking about? This isn't a stray kitten, it's a person. How will you raise him? You have nothing, no husband, no real money. You live in a studio apartment on a teacher's salary. But Mary wasn't listening anymore. She carefully folded back the edge of the blanket, examining the tiny fingers clenched into a fist. The baby opened his eyes slightly. Dark, moist, meaningless, like all newborns. But it seemed to Mary that he was looking right into her soul. I'll manage, she said, not believing her own words. I'll manage somehow. You mean you want to adopt him? The neighbor gasped. Are you in your right mind, girl? You're only 27, unmarried, living paycheck to paycheck. And who will allow it? Mary whispered hotly, as if afraid the baby would hear and be offended. Look at him, so tiny. Who needs him? No one. But me? I need him. She said the last words so quietly the old woman didn't hear, or pretended not to. She pursed her lips, shook her head but didn't argue. She poured herself some tea and stared gloomily into her mug. And what do you plan to do, file the paperwork? I don't know how, but I will. It was 2 a.m. when Mary finally reached her studio apartment. Freezing walls, peeling wallpaper, an iron bed with a sagging spring mattress, and her only wealth, a bookshelf crammed with classics. She should have returned earlier, but she and Barbara had waited for the police officer until the last moment. When he showed up, rumpled and tired, smelling of coffee, he just twirled his finger at his temple. Do you understand what you're taking on, teacher? This is an 18-year sentence for you, hard labor, without parole. He said something else about tests, about how the mother might be found. Think carefully, girl. But Mary pressed her lips together and shook her head. The baby had woken up by then, started crying, and she had to run to the all-night pharmacy for formula and a bottle. Now she sat on the edge of the bed, holding the bottle to the baby's desperately sucking lips, thinking, God, what am I doing? What am I creating? In the silence of the room, the clock bought by her mother long ago ticked. Downstairs, Mr. Thompson, the building superintendent, a drinker but harmless, snored. School tomorrow for first period, and she had a newborn in her arms. Don't cry, baby, Mary whispered when the little one whimpered again. Mom won't abandon you. Mom. Something tore and ached in her chest at that word. She, Mary Ann Walker, 27 years old, unmarried, was a mom. It was enough to drive you crazy. I'll be your mom and your dad and everything in the world, she promised, not knowing to whom, herself or the baby. The infant quieted down, drowsy from warmth and milk. His tiny eyelashes fluttered in his sleep. Mary carefully laid him next to her on the bed, surrounded by pillows so he wouldn't roll off. She didn't sleep all night, afraid to move, afraid he would stop breathing, afraid she would wake up and he wouldn't be there, that it was all a dream, and afraid that his real mother would come and take him, or that Child Protective Services would show up and take him away. At dawn, the baby woke up and cried. She had to feed him again, then change the folded towel she was using as a diaper. She wrapped him in her own flannel blanket, deciding to wash the one she found him in. At 8 a.m., she called the school. Helen, I'm sick. Yes, suddenly. No, I can't come in today. Could you please cover for me? And all day, until evening, she fed, rocked, and just looked at this tiny creature that had fallen on her from nowhere. In the evening, Barbara stopped by, bringing a baby blanket and onesies saved from her grandchildren, and a small bottle of aspirin. "Here, Mary, you might need this." "Barbara," Mary suddenly said, holding the sleeping infant close. "He's nobody's, you understand? Abandoned. Nobody's." "He's yours now, Mary," the old woman said quietly, wiping a tear with the corner of her handkerchief. "Yours, since you've taken it on." The next few days blurred for Mary into one endless day, without sleep or rest. The first visit to the police precinct, filing the report about the found child, the application to Child Protective Services, the pediatric clinic, tests, vaccinations. They sent her to the Social Security office, then to the Vital Records office. "Let's hurry up and decide on a name, Mother," said a middle-aged, tired woman at the registry office window. "There's a line." Mary was taken aback. A name? She hadn't even thought about it. "Adam," she suddenly blurted out. "I'll name him Adam." "Why Adam?" Barbara asked later when they were examining the new birth certificate. "Adam Michael Walker." "Adam means of the earth, strong," Mary smiled. "So he grows up strong." "And Michael, why?" Mary shrugged. "My father is John, I have no brother. But Michael is the name of our school principal. He gave me a job right after college. He's a good man, so I made it up." The paperwork was filed, but the difficulties were just beginning. She had to leave her job, but fortunately, the school principal, that same Michael Anderson, made allowances. "Mary, you are a valuable staff member, so as soon as you can, come back. For now, let's do this. I'll assign you some after-hours work. You can tutor struggling students at home. It's not much, but it's something." The social services helped her apply for child benefits. A laughable amount, of course, but combined with private tutoring and her meager savings, they could get by for the first while. The hardest part was the daily routine. Mary couldn't have imagined how much a baby needed. Diapers, onesies, rompers, caps, bottles, pacifiers, rattles, powder, ointments. It was good that neighbor Barbara brought a box of baby clothes left from her grandchildren, and the women from work. Hearing about her sudden motherhood, collected what they could. Living with an unexpectedly appeared newborn turned out to be quite an ordeal. The neighbors gave her sideways glances, whispering behind her back. "Must have had a fling, that's for sure. And now she's pretending she found it." But no one said anything to her face, and Mary was grateful for that at least. At night she didn't sleep, rocking, feeding, changing diapers. During the day, as soon as Adam fell asleep, she grabbed the students' notebooks, dozed off at the table, and woke up to the babies crying. And the amazing thing was, with each day, each sleepless night, each washed onesie, this tiny creature became more and more her own. He was the first thing she saw opening her eyes in the morning, the last thing she thought of, falling asleep for a few minutes between feedings. His smile, still reflexive, unconscious, made her heart stop and then race like crazy. It was the spring of 2007. The country was living its own life, preparing for the presidential primaries, discussing rising gas prices and the upcoming financial crisis. And in a small studio apartment, Mary Walker, recently become a mother, rocked her 4-month-old son in her arms and whispered, "Look, baby, how beautiful it is outside. Spring has come. Your first spring." Adam cooed and stared wide-eyed at the sunbeams dancing on the ceiling. And Mary thought how foolish she had been to complain before about tiredness and lack of money. Now she wasn't just tired, she was dead on her feet. She wasn't just economizing. She denied herself everything but the bare necessities. But for the first time in her life, she had real happiness. Warm, smelling of milk, smiling a toothless smile. It doesn't matter whose blood flows in your veins. It matters whose heart loves you, she whispered, kissing her son's chubby cheek. And at that moment, Adam suddenly said clearly, "Mama." Mary's breath caught. She stared at her son, not believing her ears. "What did you say, baby?" "Mama," Adam repeated, looking straight into her eyes, and laughed. Mary held him close, feeling tears streaming down her cheeks, tears of happiness that she couldn't and didn't want to hold back. "Yes, baby," she whispered, kissing his warm head. "I'm your mama forever." Mary's fingers slipped from the needle again. The clock on the kitchen wall showed 3 a.m. The lamp, shaded by a newspaper, cast a dim light on the children's pants she was hemming. In the next room, 3-year-old Adam was snoring softly. Mary rubbed her sore eyes and automatically stretched her numb back. Tomorrow morning, 4 lessons at school, 2 private students in the evening, and now this sewing job for a neighbor. Life had turned into an endless race for money. Preschool, groceries, clothes, toys, everything required money. Her teacher's salary vanished the moment it touched her palm. Fortunately, over the years, she had moved from the studio apartment to a tiny 1-bedroom apartment, an inheritance from a distant aunt. Old wallpaper, creaky laminate flooring, but her own roof over her head. Mary carefully folded the hemmed pants, turned off the light, crept into the room, and lay down next to her son. Adam muttered something in his sleep and turned over, burying his nose in her shoulder. At that touch, the fatigue vanished as if by magic. She ran her hand through the boy's soft hair and smiled into the darkness. "Mary, may I walk you home?" Anthony Parker, the physics teacher, stood by the school exit with a bouquet of wildflowers. Good-natured, balding, with a soft smile at the corners of his eyes. For a month now, he had been paying her attention, carrying her briefcase, offering her coffee in the teacher's lounge. "Thank you, Anthony, but I'm in a hurry." Mary clutched the stack of notebooks tighter. "I have to pick up Adam from preschool." "I'll walk with you," the physicist said, brightening. "I've been wanting to meet your little son." On the way, he talked about the latest teaching conference, the new school principal, how his 9th graders had done on their test. Mary listened with half an ear, wondering if she had time to stop by the store for milk. Outside the preschool, Anthony suddenly fell silent, nervously adjusted his glasses, and blurted out, "Mary, marry me." She froze, her hand raised to open the door. "I'm sorry." "Marry me," he repeated, blushing. "I've been a widower for 6 years. My son Kevin is grown, and you're alone with a child. Don't think it's out of pity. I've had feelings for you for a long time." Adam ran out of his group, saw his mom, and rushed to her at a run. "Mommy, I made a dinosaur out of Play-Doh." Mary scooped up her 5-year-old son into her arms, held him tight, inhaling the scent of children's shampoo and clay. "Who's that?" Adam asked loudly, noticing the unfamiliar man with flowers. "This is my colleague," Mary replied. "Mr. Parker." That evening, after putting her son to bed, she called the physicist. "Anthony, I'm sorry, but I can't. I have a son. I don't need anyone else. But I will love him as my own," he whispered hotly into the phone. "It's not about that," Mary said quietly. I'm just not ready. Hanging up, she sat for a long time in the kitchen, looking at the darkening sky outside the window. Anthony was a good man, reliable. Life would have been easier, calmer with him, but the thought of a third person entering their home evoked a strange feeling of anxiety. Her world with Adam was fragile, built for two, and she wasn't ready to let anyone else in yet. When Adam was 6, he became seriously ill. It started as a common cold and ended with double pneumonia. Mary rushed to the cupboard where she kept her emergency savings, money set aside for a winter coat and boots. The hospital corridor, the smell of disinfectant, IV drips, inhalations. Adam lay pale, his features sharpened, breathing with a wheeze. At night, his temperature spiked, and Mary didn't leave his bedside for a second, changing cold compresses, whispering prayers she remembered from childhood. "Mary, you should go home. Get some rest." Nurse Nancy, with whom she had quickly become friends, tried to persuade her. "You've been on your feet for 2 days. You'll collapse." "I can't." Mary shook her head. "What if he wakes up and I'm not here? He'll be scared." When the crisis passed, the doctor shook his head. "The boy's lungs are weak. He needs a good rest, maybe by the ocean, the sun." Mary nodded, though she was already mentally calculating how many extra tutoring sessions she would have to take and how many nights she'd spend sewing to save up for the trip. "I'll manage," she whispered, watching Adam, who was already recovering, engrossed in drawing with the colored pencils she had brought him in the hospital. "Mommy, look, it's you." 5-year-old Adam handed her a sheet of paper. Mary took the drawing and froze. On a bright yellow background was a woman with disproportionately large eyes and long arms, something like a halo around her head, and below, in large printed letters, "My mom is the most beautiful." "You drew me so beautifully," she whispered, feeling a lump rise in her throat. "You are the most beautiful," Adam replied seriously, "and the kindest. I love you more than anyone in the world." She held her son close, hiding her sudden tears in his hair. My God, where did this little person get so much love and tenderness? "Mary, honey, you should at least paint your nails," sighed Barbara, who had stopped by to visit. "Your hands are all calloused, like a construction worker's. You're only 32, but you look—" She didn't finish, but Mary understood perfectly. The extinguished look, early wrinkles around the eyes, a perpetually tired face. But there was neither time nor money for a manicure. "I bought Adam some new paints," she smiled. "Look how bright they are." The boy sat at the table, enthusiastically mixing colors on a palette. At 10, he was already confidently drawing landscapes and animal faces. His art teacher said he had real talent. "He's growing into a fine young man," Barbara agreed. "And what is he drawing there?" "The sea," Mary explained. "We were in Florida last summer. He still can't forget it." "And why weren't you walking on the beach, always over your books?" Mary shrugged. The charity program voucher was given to her as a single mother, but only for Adam. She had to pay extra for herself, and even then, the money was barely enough. While her son splashed in the sea, she worked as a waitress in a nearby cafe to save up for the return tickets. "Mom, why are there no photos of me from the hospital when I was born?" Adam asked one day. They were looking through an old photo album, and the boy was carefully studying the pictures where he was already a crawling toddler. Mary froze. She had been afraid of this question for 10 years. "They got lost when we moved, son," she said, trying to keep her voice natural. "From the old apartment, when we moved, the box with the albums got wet. Many of the photos were ruined." Adam nodded thoughtfully. but she sensed he didn't quite believe her. It's strange that Mary never married, drifted from the slightly open door of the teacher's lounge. The boy is growing up handsome, takes after her, a beauty. Has no one been interested? Maybe she has a difficult character? Or some secret? What secrets? She's just a single mom with a kid. There are thousands like her, but it's still strange. Mary froze in the corridor, clutching the stack of notebooks tighter to her chest, then straightened her shoulders and pushed the door open. Good afternoon, colleagues. The gossips fell silent, burying their faces in their coffee cups. The years flew by unnoticed. Adam finished elementary school, moved to middle school, and then came teenage acne, a cracking voice and first serious conversations. Mom, I want to be an artist, he announced at 14. A professional one. Mary looked at her son, tall, lean, with an open gaze of intelligent eyes. He had long outgrown her, but still kissed her on the cheek every evening before going to his room. That's not a serious profession, she began cautiously. It will be hard to make a living. But you yourself said that you should do what you love. She sighed. She had indeed said that. She herself had always chosen a beloved but low-paying job, and here was the result: a constant lack of money. All right, she finally said. If it's your calling, I'll support you. So art school, exhibitions, and competitions entered their lives. Mary didn't miss a single one of her son's presentations, standing proudly among other parents when he received another certificate. Your son is very talented, his teachers told her. He should apply to an art college. And she started counting again, budgeting, saving. Courses, books, paints, everything cost money. She switched to cheaper cosmetics, canceled her gym membership, stopped buying new clothes. At night, she sat over her students' notebooks, grading tests for extra pay. You'll run yourself into the ground, Mary, the now aged Barbara would say, shaking her head when she visited. Look at those dark circles under your eyes. It's nothing, it's all temporary, Mary would brush it off. Once he gets into college, there will be a scholarship. Barbara just shook her head. Look, pay some attention to yourself sometimes. I'm not sacrificing for him, Mary objected. You don't understand, Barbara. He is my joy, my reason for living. I'm trying for my own sake. At 15, Adam became interested in contemporary art, started dressing all in black, grew out his bangs, and spent hours on the internet studying the works of Pollock and Banksy. This is just scribbles, Mary would say, perplexed, looking at his new works, strange interweavings of lines and splashes of paint. It's abstractionism, Mom, Adam would roll his eyes, expressing emotions through color and form. She tried to understand, to get into it, to be supportive. She signed up for an art history course at the local museum, read books about the avant-garde. You're a mom, not an artist, but a teacher, Adam laughed, catching her studying another art book. Studying to understand me? I'm studying so I don't fall behind, she smiled back. At 17, he decided to apply to a prestigious art school in New York. Mom, they have the best teachers there, he passionately tried to convince her. And more opportunities. She looked at her grown son and saw the tiny infant she had found in the stairwell all those years ago. For all these 17 years, she had been afraid that his real mother would appear and take him away. Every day she thanked fate that it hadn't happened. New York City is an expensive city, she cautiously began. They don't give dorm rooms to everyone. I'll get a job, he assured her. drawing portraits in Times Square or logos for websites. They sat in the kitchen of their small apartment, drinking tea, making plans. Outside, May 2024 was beginning. There were only a few weeks left until final exams. "You know," Adam suddenly said, looking at his mother over his cup, "sometimes I think about how your life would have turned out if not for me. You could have—" "Don't you dare even think that," Mary interrupted. "You are the best thing that ever happened to me." He smiled a boyishly embarrassed smile. "A mother's heart doesn't know the word stranger," she said quietly, reaching out and brushing an unruly strand from his forehead. "You are my son, my only one, my beloved." At that moment, the doorbell rang. It was a long, insistent, unpleasant ring. Who could that be? Adam frowned. "It's late." Mary shrugged, rising from the table. Probably the neighbor asking for sugar, or Barbara decided to stop by. She went to open the door, not suspecting that her past stood on the other side, ready to destroy 17 years of happiness in an instant. The private clinic Serenity Wellness greeted Ingrid with sterile whiteness, muted lighting, and the smell of expensive air freshener, the same kind she had in her car. Ocean breeze scent for $200. Respectable patients in designer clothes quietly conversed in the waiting area, flipping through glossy magazines. Ingrid automatically adjusted the gold bracelet on her wrist and smoothed her cashmere blouse. "Ingrid S. Collins," a voice came from the speaker. "Please proceed to room 304. She stood up, squaring her shoulders. At 39, she looked 30. Regular salon treatments, a personal trainer, and proper nutrition paid off. Only in recent months had something fractured in her appearance. Barely noticeable shadows appeared under her eyes, a nervous crease between her brows that even fillers couldn't hide. "Have a seat, Ingrid." Dr. Lambert pointed to a chair and took off her glasses. Ingrid already knew that gesture. Bad news. "I have the results of your latest tests." "Well, what is it?" Ingrid tried to sound casual. "Are my hormones acting up again?" The doctor paused, looking over the papers in front of her as if seeing them for the first time. But Ingrid knew she had already studied everything. She was just delaying the moment. "Ingrid, I must tell you," Lambert looked up, "that you will not be able to have any more children." The world lost its focus for a second. Ingrid stared at the doctor's perfectly made-up lips, her impeccable hairstyle, the expensive Mont Blanc pen in her hand, and couldn't breathe. "Is it final?" she whispered. "I'm afraid so. The last IVF attempts also yielded no results. You have developed adhesions in your fallopian tubes. Likely a consequence." The doctor hesitated. "Of your lifestyle in your youth." Ingrid looked away. "Drugs." The doctor didn't say the word, but it hung in the air. Those cursed years when she, a 20-year-old fool who had run away from a small town in the Midwest to conquer Los Angeles, got hooked on cocaine. Years erased from memory, or at least she tried very hard to erase them. "And surrogacy?" Ingrid asked, clutching at the last straw. "With your diagnosis, even with surrogacy, the chances are minimal," the doctor sighed. "The egg quality is poor. Perhaps you should consider adoption." Ingrid stopped listening. Adoption. She needed her own child, a blood relative of Greg. For this, she had married him, rich, influential, 18 years her senior. For this, she endured his commanding tone, late-night calls from business partners, boring corporate events, for the sake of a child who was supposed to be the heir to his business empire. She left the clinic without saying goodbye, got into her snow-white Mercedes parked under a no-stopping sign, and froze, gripping the steering wheel. Tears streamed down her cheeks, smearing her mascara. Ingrid watched the cars rushing by, the people hurrying somewhere, and suddenly a memory surfaced from the depths of her mind. A hospital ward, the smell of bleach, a nurse with a hard, condemning gaze. What shall we do with the baby? Foster care, I suppose. What happened, dear? Gregory Collins put aside his tablet with stock market reports and looked intently at his wife. Ingrid sat on the edge of their huge bed, still in her street clothes. Empty gaze, slumped shoulders. He hadn't seen her like this since they returned from Switzerland after the second failed IVF attempt. The doctor said, "I can't have any more children," Ingrid said quietly, staring at one point. Ever. Gregory sighed heavily. He knew it was coming. At 50, he dreamed of an heir. He hadn't built an empire for it to go to distant relatives or business partners after his death. "We'll think of something," he said, moving closer to his wife and putting an arm around her shoulders. "Maybe we can adopt a boy?" "Greg," Ingrid suddenly whispered, raising her tear-filled eyes to him. "I did give birth to a boy once. Maybe we can find him." Gregory froze. He knew that story. One of the skeletons in his wife's closet. At 21, at the peak of her drug addiction, she had given birth to a child and left it in the stairwell of some building. An act she only remembered in her worst moments, when she drank herself into oblivion. "You don't even know if he's alive," Gregory said cautiously. "And if he is?" A mixture of hope and calculation flashed in Ingrid's eyes. If good people found him, he should be 17, almost 18 now. He's practically an adult. Greg, he could be the heir to your fortune, continue the family line. "You don't even remember which stairwell you left him in." Gregory shook his head. "I do remember," Ingrid insisted hotly. "It was a building on Maple Avenue. I was living with a friend then, a former friend, and I have the date written down, January 10th, 2007. Gregory looked intently at his wife. In 11 years of marriage, he had never seen such determination in her eyes. "I'll hire a private investigator," he finally said. "A professional. Let's see what can be done." Ingrid impulsively hugged him. "Thank you, Greg. I knew you'd help. We'll find our boy. I'm sure of it." Gregory hugged his wife back, but something anxious stirred in his soul. Our boy. But the boy wasn't his. He didn't even know who the father was. Ingrid had never said. "We found him," Samuel Davis, a private investigator with 20 years of experience, reported laconically. He placed a thin folder on the table in front of the Collins couple. Ingrid grabbed it with trembling hands, but didn't dare open it. "Is it definitely him?" Gregory asked, drumming his fingers on the table. 99% sure," the investigator nodded. "The date and place match. The mother had no children of her own. She found him in that very stairwell, formalized the adoption through child services. It's all legal, but..." He spread his hands. "It can be contested." Ingrid finally opened the folder. The first thing she saw was a photograph of a fair-haired young man with an easel. Tall, lean, with fine features. The eyes, her eyes, the same shape, the same form, and the nose was exactly like her father's. "It's him," she whispered, feeling a lump rise in her throat. "My boy." "Adam Michael Walker," Davis continued. A graduating high school student, preparing to enter an art college, a very talented young man, winner of regional competitions, has publications in art magazines. An artist, Ingrid looked at her husband. My grandfather was an artist. Remember? I told you. Gregory nodded, studying the papers. And the mother? Mary Ann Walker, teacher of English literature. Single, never married. According to all documents, she is the biological mother, but the investigator pointed to dates in the medical record. You see, Adam was born in January 2007, and just a month before that, Walker underwent a preoperative examination for an appendectomy. No signs of pregnancy. Either a miracle or he's not hers. What else? Ingrid asked impatiently. Anything special? Identifying marks? There's a birthmark on his left shoulder, the investigator nodded. Shaped like a crescent moon. Ingrid paled. I have the exact same one, and my father had one too. Gregory exchanged a glance with the investigator. Do you have the address? Of course. They live modestly in a one-bedroom apartment. Here. Davis handed over a sheet of paper with the address. School, art studio, it's all there. Ingrid jumped up. Let's go right now. Ingrid, wait. Gregory held her arm. We need to think this through. We can't just burst into someone else's life. Someone else's? She turned sharply. He's my son, Greg. My blood. You gave birth to him and abandoned him, Gregory said quietly. Ingrid froze as if struck. Then she slowly sat back down. I was sick, she whispered. You know I wasn't in my right mind. I didn't know what I was doing. And now I want to make it right. Gregory looked intently at his wife. Do you think it's that simple? No. She shook her head. But I have to try. I have to at least see him, talk to him. He's my only son, Greg, the only one I'll ever have. Gregory sighed. He knew that look, the look Ingrid got when she had decided something. It was impossible to dissuade her. All right, he said finally. But let's consult with lawyers first. Find out the best way to proceed. Mary was grading 11th grade essays when the doorbell rang. 3 short rings, 1 long one. Adam always rang like that when he forgot his keys. Coming, coming, she called out, putting down her pen. Forgot his keys again, the scatterbrain. But outside the door stood not the familiar lanky figure of her son, but an unfamiliar woman in her 40s. Tall, impeccably dressed in an expensive sand-colored pantsuit. Her hair was gathered in an elegant bun, her makeup flawless. Diamond earrings sparkled in her ears. Mary Ann Walker? The woman's voice was low, with a slight huskiness. Yes, Mary answered, confused, automatically smoothing her home t-shirt. And you are? Ingrid S. Collins. The woman handed over a business card with gold embossing. May I come in? We need to talk. Mary nodded uncertainly and stepped aside, letting the stranger into the apartment. The guest smelled of expensive perfume, a subtle, barely perceptible scent. A sharp contrast to the smell of pizza Mary was preparing for dinner. Come to the kitchen, she offered. Have a seat. Ingrid glanced around the cramped little kitchen, with paint peeling in places on the walls, a neatly mended tablecloth, and an old electric stove. A flicker of pity crossed her eyes, but was quickly replaced by resolve. I won't beat around the bush, she said, perching on the edge of a chair. I am your son's mother, his biological mother, and I've come to take my child back. Mary froze. Her heart skipped a beat, then began to race like crazy. She gripped the back of the chair, feeling her legs go weak. "What are you talking about?" she managed to squeeze out. "What child?" "Adam Walker," Ingrid said firmly. "The very child you found in the stairwell of this building 18 years ago." Darkness swam before Mary's eyes. This couldn't be happening. It couldn't. 18 years had passed. 18 years of fear that someday the real mother would come and say these very words. "I don't understand," she began. But Ingrid was already opening her leather purse and taking out documents. She laid them in front of Mary. "DNA test results. I found the blanket I left him in among my old things. There were my hairs in it. They were compared with a sample, which we obtained from Adam's comb at the art studio. A 99.9% match. Here are the medical documents. He has a birthmark on his left shoulder, shaped like a crescent moon. I have the same one. And my father had it too." Mary stared at the papers without seeing them. She knew about the birthmark. She knew it better than anyone. "You abandoned him," she whispered. "You threw him away like trash." "I was sick," Ingrid replied, looking Mary straight in the eye. "I was a drug addict. I didn't know what I was doing. But now I'm a different person. I'm healthy. I have a family, a husband. We can give Adam everything. A future, an education, a career." "He has a future," Mary said, her voice trembling. "He has me." "You?" Ingrid looked around the kitchen again. "What can you give him? A teacher's salary? This apartment? He's a talented boy. He needs to develop, not survive." "He's happy with me," Mary said, feeling tears welling up. "He loves me." "He loves you because he doesn't know his real mother." Ingrid stood up. "I'm not asking, Mary. I'm informing you. I will go to court to have the adoption annulled. I have the best lawyers. You have no chance." "You can't do that," Mary whispered. "He's my son." "He's my son," Ingrid repeated, emphasizing each word. "My blood, and I will get him back." The doorbell rang again. 3 short rings, 1 long one. Adam was home. Ingrid quickly put the documents back in her purse. "I'll give you a week to think it over," she said quietly. "Tell him yourself. Prepare him. Or I'll do it. The choice is yours." She walked to the door and opened it. Adam stood on the threshold, holding a folder with his drawings. He looked in surprise at the unfamiliar woman. "Hello," he said uncertainly. "Hello, Adam," Ingrid smiled, looking at him with a strange, greedy look. "I'm an old friend of your mother's. Just stopped by for a minute." She stepped past him into the hallway and left without looking back. Adam came into the kitchen. "Mom, who was that?" Mary stood by the window, her back to him, her shoulders shaking. "Mom, what's wrong?" He rushed to her, turned her around, and saw her tear-stained face. "What did she say to you?" Mary shook her head, unable to speak. She just hugged her son tightly, as if afraid he would disappear right then and there. "Nothing, baby," she whispered into his shoulder. "Nothing important. Just a difficult parent." The next few days were hell for Mary. She couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Every time the phone rang, she flinched. Every time the doorbell rang, her heart stopped. She watched Adam trying to memorize every feature of his face, the sound of his voice, his laugh. He noticed her strange behavior. "Mom, are you okay? You look terrible." "It's just fatigue, son. End-of-year reports at school." She couldn't bring herself to tell him the truth. She was afraid. Afraid of losing him, afraid of his reaction. What if he wanted to go with her, to a rich, beautiful mother who could give him everything? Ingrid called twice. The first time, she reminded her of the week's deadline. The second time, she said she had already filed a lawsuit. The hearing was scheduled for June 15th. "Tell him before the court does," Ingrid said. "It will be better for everyone." Mary decided to wait until after the final exams. Adam was already on edge, studying for tests. She didn't want to add to his stress. But time was running out. The day before the hearing, she gathered her courage. She made his favorite dinner, set the table, and waited for him to come home from his art studio. "Son, we need to talk," she began when they had finished eating. Adam looked at her attentively. He had noticed for a long time that something was wrong with his mother. "What's happened?" Mary took a deep breath. "Remember that woman who came to see us a couple of weeks ago? The one in the expensive suit? Your friend?" "She's not my friend," Mary said quietly. "She's your mother." Adam frowned. "What do you mean, my mother?" "You're my mother." "I'm your adoptive mother," Mary corrected, feeling each word like a knife to her heart. "I found you when you were a baby, in the stairwell. Someone left you there, and I took you in, adopted you." Adam stared at her as if she were speaking a foreign language. "What are you talking about, Mom? Is this some kind of joke?" "No, son. It's not a joke," she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. "It's the truth. That woman, Ingrid Collins, is your biological mother. She gave birth to you and left you, and now she wants you back." Adam stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "I don't believe it," he said, his voice trembling. "It can't be true. Show me the documents." Mary went to the cupboard, took out a folder with his adoption papers, which she had kept all these years, and handed it to him. Adam flipped through the pages, his hands shaking. He saw the date, the place, the note from the police. He saw the medical certificate stating that Mary Walker had no children of her own. He saw it all, but his mind refused to accept it. "Why didn't you tell me before?" he asked quietly. "I was afraid," Mary admitted. "Afraid of losing you. I wanted to tell you when you turned 18. I thought you'd be an adult then, and it would be easier for you to understand." "And now she's suing for custody?" Adam's voice was cold, alien. Mary nodded. "The hearing is tomorrow." Adam turned and walked out of the kitchen without another word. A minute later, she heard the door to his room slam shut. Mary remained sitting at the table, alone among the unfinished dishes, and cried. She had lost him. She felt it. He would never look at her the same way again. The courtroom was packed. The case of the millionaire Collins against the school teacher Walker had attracted the attention of the press. Journalists with cameras crowded in the hallway, trying to get a comment from the parties. Mary sat on the defendant's bench, pale, with dark circles under her eyes. Next to her was a court-appointed lawyer, a young woman who clearly felt out of her depth. Opposite them sat Ingrid and Gregory Collins, accompanied by two expensive lawyers in tailored suits. Adam sat between them, as if in no man's land. He hadn't spoken to Mary since last night. He came to the courthouse with the Collins in their Mercedes. He was wearing new clothes, an expensive shirt and trousers that Ingrid had bought him. He looked like a completely different person, a stranger. The judge, a stern woman in her 50s, entered the courtroom. The hearing began. Ingrid's lawyers laid out their position. The adoption was illegal because Mary Walker had concealed the fact that the child was found. They presented documents, witness statements, and a DNA test. They talked about the excellent conditions the Collins could provide for the young man, about his brilliant future. Then it was the defense's turn. Mary's lawyer tried to argue that Mary had raised the boy for 18 years, that she was his only mother, that tearing him away from her would be a trauma. But her arguments sounded weak compared to the solid case of the other side. "The court will now hear from the parties involved," the judge announced. "Mrs. Collins, you may speak." Ingrid stood up. She spoke calmly, confidently. She talked about her past mistakes, about how she had overcome addiction, found God, and started a new life. She talked about her desire to make amends to her son, to give him everything he deserved. She cried when she talked about the pain of loss she had felt all these years. The judge listened attentively, occasionally nodding. "Mrs. Walker, your statement." Mary rose slowly. Her legs were weak, her voice trembled. "Your Honor," she began quietly, I don't know what to say. I'm just a simple teacher. I never had much money, but I had love. I loved this boy from the first second I saw him. I raised him as best I could. I tried to give him not only food and clothes, but also kindness, understanding, support. He is my whole life. If you take him away from me, I don't know what I'll do." She couldn't continue. Sobs choked her. The lawyer helped her sit down. The courtroom was silent. Even the journalists stopped whispering. "The court will now hear from Adam Walker," the judge said. "Young man, please come forward." Adam stood up. He walked slowly to the witness stand. He was pale but calm. He looked at the judge, then at his biological mother, then at Mary. For a long moment, there was silence. "Your Honor," he began, his voice surprisingly firm, "I have listened to both women. One gave me life but abandoned me. The other found me, cold and hungry, and gave me everything she had. Her love, her care, her whole life." He paused, looking at Mary. "For 18 years, she was my mother. She stayed up nights with me when I was sick. She denied herself everything so I could have paints and go to art school. She believed in me when no one else did. She is my mother, not by blood, but by the right of love." Ingrid gasped softly. Gregory put a hand on her shoulder. "Mrs. Collins." Adam turned to his biological mother. "Thank you for giving me life. I bear no grudge against you. I understand that you were going through a difficult time. But you cannot become my mother just because you want to now. A mother is not the one who gives birth, but the one who raises. The one who is there in joy and in sorrow. The one whose hands you remember from childhood. The one whose voice lulled you to sleep." He looked at the judge again. "Your Honor, I am almost 18 years old. In a few months, I will be an adult. And I want to stay with the woman who raised me, with my mother, Mary Ann Walker. I ask the court to reject Mrs. Collins's claim." A dead silence fell in the courtroom. Then Mary burst into tears, quiet, happy tears. Ingrid sat with her head bowed, not looking at anyone. The judge cleared her throat. "The court has heard the position of the minor. Given the circumstances and the will of Adam Walker, who is almost of age, the court sees no grounds for satisfying the claim. The claim of Ingrid S. Collins is denied." The gavel struck. It was over. Adam walked over to Mary and hugged her tightly. "Forgive me, Mom, for yesterday. I was just in shock." "There's nothing to forgive, son," she whispered, holding him close. "Nothing at all." They left the courthouse together, arm in arm, not paying attention to the flashing cameras or Ingrid's tearful face. They were together, and that was all that mattered. On the street, Adam suddenly stopped. "You know, Mom, I've been thinking. I won't go to New York. I'll enter the state university, so I can be closer to you." Mary looked at him, and in his eyes, she saw not the frightened boy from yesterday, but a grown man, her son. "No," she said firmly. "You will go to New York. You have a talent that needs to be developed. And I'll be waiting for you, and I'll come visit. We'll manage." Adam smiled, the same smile she had fallen in love with 18 years ago. "Okay, Mom, as you say." They walked home to their small apartment, to their simple life, to their great love that had withstood the toughest test. And Mary knew that no matter what happened next, they would overcome everything, because they were a family, a real family. The gavel has fallen. The choice was made. But this story leaves us with a quieter, more profound question. Adam and Mary didn't just win a case. They defined a family, not by blood, but by the choice to put each other's futures first. He chose her. She, in turn, chose to let him go to New York, putting his dreams above her own need for closeness. So here is the real dilemma. Was their final sacrifice, agreeing to live apart for his education, the ultimate proof of their bond? Or was it the final, unnecessary price paid for a battle they never asked for? What is the harder test of love? Fighting the world to keep your child close? Or having the strength to let them go when it's time? The verdict is yours. Share your judgment in the comments. If this story of a choice that defined a family stayed with you, become a part of ours. Like, subscribe to the What Happened Then stories, and share your perspective. The next story awaits.